There are so many issues with this Pacific Connector pipeline, it's hard to pick which one, you know. I mean, some people today did talk about the subduction zone earthquake issue, that the terminal is going to be built on one of the mega thrusts, that it could be an 8.0 earthquake within the next 50 years. The lifetime of this project will be at least 50 years and probably go on for that. In Coos Bay, the average time between these megathrust earthquakes is 300, let me see, what is it, 250 years. And we're at 300 years now, so we're way past due for this earthquake over there. And the terminal will be built on sand dunes. Now, what happens when the earth shakes violently in an earthquake? It liquefies. Oh, but we shouldn't worry, because the sand underneath the terminal site will not liquefy, because they're going to tap it down with the tampers really hard, right? And then we're also concerned about these two huge liquefied natural gas holding tanks. They're millions of gallons each. They're the largest building on the site, two of them. And they have to be kept cold all the time, because that's what compresses them. If they ever lose electricity, they'll start to expand quickly. So what about the tsunami that's predicted during the lifetime of this project? Oh, we shouldn't worry about that, because they're going to build up this sand berm around these big LNG tanks, and the berm is going to be 36 feet high, and a tsunami will never reach over 30 feet. So this is their whole plan, to keep the whole community of Coos Bay safe when the earthquake and tsunami happens, because we know it will happen and will likely happen within the time frame of this project. What we don't have is a scientific peer review of their assessments of that they're going to keep everybody safe. We have no scientific peer review of the berm that's going to go around the tanks, of the tamping ground will not liquefy, the fact that they're going to be able to maintain electricity the whole time to keep these tanks cool, that no of the huge LNG tankers within the port are going to be pushed up into the tanks. I don't know. So we need a peer review. And FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the one that will authorize this project, has never offered a peer review of qualified scientists, earthquake scientists, on what they propose. That's a big, big problem. I'll tell you another problem that really upsets me a lot. It's the fact that these LNG tankers, I think it's about 250 times that they will go across and back over the ocean. And there are a whole source of endangered species that live in that ocean, like turtles, 3 species of turtles, and whales that can be impacted by all this increased tanker traffic. Whales especially, there's 7 species of whales, endangered species of whales, that are in the path of these increased tankers. Actually, there's 8 species of whales. 1 is not listed as endangered. 7 are. And in their report, they write up thousands of pages saying how wonderful they're going to be. And one of these talks about the whales. And it says that they know now that whales cannot hear these huge tankers coming, because there's a sound shadow in front of the hull of these huge tankers, and the whales can't hear them. Oh, but they say there is technology where they could do a directional array to broadcast their signs so the whales can hear them and get out of the way. They say that this exists, but then they say it's not required by law, therefore they will not use it. Oregon, California, and Washington State have a huge amount of ship traffic, and I'm sorry I don't have my statistics with me. There is a large number of whales that are killed every year, and this will only increase that problem. It's a very, very sad, sad problem with whales and big tankers.
Do you want to say anything about the land trust?
Well, I work with an organization called Oregon Women's Land Trust, and we have 147 acres near Days Creek, Oregon. And it sits in the path of the Pacific Connector pipeline. I'll never forget the day they sent us a letter that said, oh, by the way, we want to use your property. Could you just please sign here? It's back like in 2006 or something. And we were already familiar with the fight against this project, and they had moved the pipeline onto our land after the whole thing began. And so we said no, and you can't come on the land to survey, and don't do it, period. And in 2013, they gave us more information. They sent us a big 3-ring binder that had an offer in it, and they were going to offer money for the 8 acres of our property they had to use to put this pipeline in. It's 8 acres on a ridgetop, and it turns out to be our most beautiful forest that we have on the land, and our oldest forest that we have on the land. And it turns out to be the place on our land that is immediately adjacent to a BLM old growth forest that has a known owl activity center in it. And so between our BLM land that we know and love very well and our property, we were just devastated that they had to clear cut a 100-foot wide swath through this property. And it's 8 acres in our land. We could never replace those trees. The offer said that that they will give us a one-time payment of $2,290 for the 8 acres. And they justified it in this 3-ring binder by saying, oh, you know, you have 147 acres, it's worth this much, you divide it by 147, it's per acre, and we'll give you half of that because you could grow flowers on it and use it too. And so that's what it came down to. They thought they knew that they were going to get permission from our federal government to condemn our land and take it for their project. And that's why we have no choice. They know we would have no choice. They just offered us the lowest possible offer that they could make to us.
So what's your response?
Well, our response was, hell no. And then in 2016, March of 2016, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, agreed with us. We were shocked. We were calling them the rubber stamp agency, and suddenly they sided with us once. They said the impacts to landowners does not outweigh the benefits of this project. Therefore, you cannot have the permission to take this property.
It's the first time they've said no to a natural gas project, right?
Yes, right. March of 2016 is when they said no. And amazingly, about a week later, we got another offer from the company. They said, oh, wouldn't you take $20,000? We said, why? You've been denied, you know? And no to $20,000. They said, oh, but you can get another $20,000 by selling your trees, you know? You can get a whole $40,000. We were like, no way. And so then, in December of 2016, they of course appealed that decision. In December of 2016, FERC affirmed their position. No, you cannot get the permission to condemn people's property for your project. The benefits do not outweigh the problems and impacts to landowners. As almost a quote from them, right? So for a month we celebrated because about a month later, Trump was inaugurated. 2 days after he was inaugurated, they refiled and said, well, let's try again under the Trump administration. So they're going through it a third time, starting over again. Public comments. Goes on, doesn't it? On.
And the state could stop it by themselves, right?
The state could say no. Absolutely. And the state should say no. They have every reason to say no to the highest water degradation project ever proposed for the state of Oregon. Yeah. And we're so surprised that our senators, Wyden and Merkley, are not out there saying no, especially for Senator Merkley. Keep it in the ground. He has this keep it in the ground project. But when it comes to, let's increase fracking, because the company has clearly stated in their documents, in the purpose and need for this project, they have clearly stated that fracking has produced so much natural gas that if they can't export it, they will have to stop fracking. I mean, they took 140 pages to say that, but that's what they said. And we're going to lose jobs from fracking. It'll be terrible, right, if they can't export it. So Senator Merkley has a keep it in the ground policy, yet he is not opposed to this project, which has clearly said it will increase fracking to supply this natural gas.
So that seems like that's a pretty big, important piece. I mean, reaching out to our senators and telling them we want some serious support against this.
We have tried. I've gone to Washington, D.C. and talked to them in person. I get no support from them at all. Senator Merkley has said that he is not in favor of eminent domain, and but he has not come out against the increased fracking. He has not come out against the largest greenhouse gas emitter project in Oregon. He has not come out opposed to this whatsoever. And being opposed to eminent domain doesn't say anything, doesn't stop this project, because of course he has no power to say don't condemn their property. It's just one sound good.
So what would you say if to viewers that know not much about this but want to get involved? What can people do?
They can contact their state senator or rep and tell them they're opposed to this project and why they're opposed to it. There's a couple good websites that has a lot of good information. No LNG. So go
No LNG exports.org.
NoLNGexports.org. Thank you. And just say no to the largest greenhouse gas emitter in the state of Oregon. That's all you got to know. You know, let's not build this new terminal after the Boardman coal plant closes. We're going to build a new terminal that gives over half of what Boardman emitted. So yeah, that's the best thing, is to contact your local rep and tell them to please be opposed to this project. And
Kate Brown, right?
And Kate Brown, and not to mention your federal representatives in Congress.
Is there anything else you think we haven't talked about?
Oh, there's a couple.
Anything else you'd like to
few
add?
hours I could go on
Anything?
about.
Anything you want to make sure to say?
Anything you want to make sure
Yes.
that you would like to express now?
I want to talk about forest fires.
That seems like a really big deal to me.
First thing I want to talk about is they have a class system. Class 1 is rural areas, and Class 4 is urban areas. So if there's less than 10 families living along 1 mile of the pipeline, it's called a Class 1 area, which allows the company to do multitude of cost-saving features of the pipeline. They get to use thinner pipes, less welds, less inspections. They get to bury it higher. They have this whole slew of cost-saving features for the company when it's put in a rural area. Why? They've never said why. They've never said because if it blows, only a few of you will die. I mean, they don't come out and say that, but why? Why else would they have all these cost-saving features in rural areas, right? And most of the rural area this pipeline goes through in southern Oregon is in a dry southern Oregon forest that naturally burn off and are very prone to forest fires. So in 2015, when the Stouts Creek fire burned, we realized, well, wait a minute, forest fires could impact this pipeline. It could make it unstable. It could damage the integrity of the pipe for several ways. Well, first of all, we looked in the EIS, and FERC said one paragraph to this forest fire issue: no impacts, the pipeline's buried, the ground's a good insulator, right? Well, then the Corps of Engineers submitted comments and they disagreed with FERC. And they said, no, if a burning tree falls over the pipeline route, or if a slash pile, and they plan to leave lots of slash piles to deter ATVers, or if a slash pile were to sustain a burn over that pipeline, it will damage the integrity of the pipe. So the Corps of Engineers disagreed with FERC. So then it's FERC's turn to reply to all comments. So when they came out with the reply to comments, we were really, what did they say to the Corps? And we searched and searched and we searched, and you know what they said to the Corps? Nothing. They ignored the Corps. They did not address that issue at all. And of course, we brought up other issues with forest fires. The pipeline is going to be buried on ridge tops, right? And the ridge tops is where the bulldozers, these very, very heavy bulldozers, churn up the earth to create fire lines. And so, as a matter of fact, there was a huge, heavy bulldozer on the pipeline route in the Stouts Creek fire. Did I say 17 miles of that Stouts Creek? 17 miles of the proposed pipeline was impacted by that Stouts Creek fire, including ridgetop bulldozers. The other thing is that fire can often burn underground through the root system. FERC never addressed that. And the other thing is the fact that this is in a Class 1 area where the weakest safety measures apply to that pipe, period. Oh, and then 17 places along the pipeline route, the pipe is going to be above ground. It's called block valves. And so there was one block valve in the Stouts Creek fire area, right? What would have happened to that above ground section of the pipe if the pipeline had already been in there before that Stouts Creek fire started? And so we asked FERC all these questions, and the answer is ignore, don't even talk about it, no issue whatsoever. And so this was all in the last round. Now the newest round for this year, they've already put out their papers, and the one on forest fires has one paragraph. No problem, the ground will insulate it from fire. They don't address any of our comments we submitted last year. It's in their face. They won't admit it's a huge problem. Not to mention the discrimination against rural people with a Class 1, with this safety, just to make the company, just to be able to make the company save a lot of money, right? Same way with that mitigation thing.
So much information.
Oh,
it's
so shall I go on?
crazy.
Let me see, what else?
It is a lot. It's really a lot.
This is the worst thing that could ever come to Oregon. There's thing after thing after thing that just says no, not here, not in Oregon. We are not. We should not be the vehicle for a foreign country to make a lot of money to ship their gas, 70% Canadian gas, to a foreign country. Just passing through Oregon and processing it in Coos Bay. It doesn't do us any good at all, and it only hurts our children the most with the greenhouse gas emissions. You know, they say that, oh, this will go to China, so China will burn less coal. Therefore, it's good for the climate, right? What they forget to mention is that all along the way, from fracking to the pipelines, to the processing, to the shipping, to the regasifying, all along the way, there's little methane leaks, right? Methane leaked unburned into the atmosphere is 86 times more potent greenhouse gas than coal. Right? And so this project is not saving our climate whatsoever. That is a lie, that it's going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's going to increase them substantially.